everyone. It's live at 5 Monday, so it's a little bit after 5, but there's a 5 in there somewhere. And today is like no other. There is always lots of things going on out there in the world. I do have the herb picked out for the day or for the week, and you might find this one very interesting. And I might just kind of dive into the this particular herb. I'll do it at the end. One of the things I wanted to talk about today is we know the coronavirus is still out there, and usually don't like to talk about the same thing over and over, but the idea is, what do you believe? So you may hear or you may read, you may watch something that is being put out there. And I think one of the things about reading about anything, in this case the coronavirus, is to actually tap into a few different information. And so this is, I think, important. I'm not sure if this is coming through. Eileen, is it still coming through? Because my screen is actually freezing here because I'm actually uploading a software program. So I'm not sure if you can actually hear me or watch me at this point. So if you can, great. But I am uploading some software, not good timing, but it took a whole lot longer than I would have thought, but it's still in the process. So yes, back to the coronavirus is to actually make sure that you have a few different sources of information. Some things that I'm hearing on one hand may be that there are people are saying, or you're hearing news and pieces of information where there may be a lot more people dead, and where is another, I think this was from the government, 300 and something people have passed due to having the coronavirus. And as I said before, the immune system of people are not necessarily in the best shape, so to speak, and that is, autoimmune diseases, the elderly, and there's a lot of people, living, but they're living on a lot of medications, and so they don't necessarily have the ideal immune system. And we're also talking about nervous system. I mean, the body is a whole. So when it comes to anything that's kind of circulating, I would absolutely be mindful of getting the information or observing the information from a few different places, just to be taking in this case, maybe a few sides, but both sides of the story. We can use this in many different circumstances, just not the coronavirus. The thing about that, and about anything that kind of comes in our awareness, is the emotions and the feelings that come in. And these emotions will drive certain feelings. And the way we get emotional is because of, past circumstances, events that may have happened. Quite often, I mention this and I ask people in my walk club, they will say, I do this or I do that. And I would ask them, well, why do you do that? And in cases, they would say, this or that about, but if you do this, this is going to be, safe, or this is going to be that. And I'll turn around and I'll ask them, well, why is it that you recommend that? And quite often they've had an experience or a story to share. So I would just kind of expand that to all of us here, that when people would rather have something done a certain way or not done a certain way, that we have the option to ask them, why do you like it that way? Or why is it that you don't do that? And it's an awesome way to kind of explore where people are at, because quite often people just, they just do things, and we never kind of question why. And at times, I'll give you a quick example of this. So again, we're talking about emotions and feelings and And, there's certain beliefs in some ways, but also events that have actually happened. A case would be, and I'm kind of making up this, but it's not far from happening, is people are afraid of dogs. And if you ask them why they are afraid of dogs, you'll soon find out they've either been bitten by a dog or somebody they know been bitten by a dog. Or in one case, a friend of mine, mother was very fearful of dogs. So she put the fear of dogs, into maybe at least this child, one child. I can't say it's going to work for everybody in that respect, but I find it very, very interesting. And it kind of just helps us to better understand each other and why we do things. This doesn't mean we have to do it, the way they like, the way they perceive it to be done. We may not have the same fears as somebody else, but emotions and feelings, if we understand our emotions and feeling, there's a lot that goes on here. Emotions, as we think of anger, guilty, there's not a whole lot of them, and some of them are kind of tied together. We can actually learn more about ourselves. So I'm kind of bringing that, what I just talked about, why we do the things we do, into the certain emotions that we may play with or act out. Let's say anger is a very common one, and that one is it's big for a lot of people because there's other underlying things that go on to you'll get to anger. And in some cases, sadness can be a precursor to being to getting angry. So if we stay with anger, we stay with learning about our emotions, we can learn about ourselves in as to why do we have the anger. Now, if you have anger, if a person has anger for a very long period of time, there may be a number of circumstances where angry has popped in, where there's reasons to get angry. And it may not be a solid, how can I say it? May not be one of the deeper reasons for anger. Let's just say that. And many of the other emotions and feelings, as we repeat them, may be the same thing. So you can just imagine if you are quite often dealing with the present. Let's just say, I'm just going to pull it in, a car cuts you off and you get angry. Now, that circumstances that kind of happens to a number of us is a very easy example for me to give you that, quite often if there's not anger within us, we don't act out angry. And there's a reason why the anger is still there. And that's the reason to dive in. If we have to think of it as a pool, and is that, the little things, those little things that you may get angry at are kind of just at the surface. So it's easy to be on the surface and to take out our anger on those things, or even other things that might be, not as important, or not as, that kind of thing. So you can see how anger has different levels. And so if there's anger there for the reasons they are, it is about understanding why the anger is there. And quite often, I have to tell you, we have to dive through those, cars cutting you off anger, and the little things, breaking a glass, getting angry because you broke a glass. There's so many of examples I could give here, but the idea is most people are not diving deep to understand the anger at such a level. Now imagine this. There are other people that actually don't want to even feel the anger. So something happens and the emotion is not being felt. And so it's being suppressed. It's being pushed down. It's not an emotion. And this is kind of part of the conditioning that we want to express, because people are going to think we're angry, and they're not going to see it in a good light. I mean, sadness is the same thing, or just being unstable, with our emotions, too emotional, show our feelings too much, and that may have a perception in many respects, right? So this whole thing around emotion, the feelings, why I'm kind of bringing them up is because it's very, very important to understand disease, and why we would actually have disease is based on the emotions that have been suppressed, the feelings that we don't fully feel, but also how do you get to learning more and understanding more about the feelings and the emotions. So it comes up a lot when I'm working with people, and even with people if it's just on nutrition and health. And the counseling part of it, it's really the main thing, but not necessarily the first thing that we're kind of diving into, what emotions, what feelings do you have? It's not something that comes up initially. To get there, we have to go through a few things and have discussion and have understanding. But that is an important thing to dive deep. Most people, I've heard of stories where it's fine in a pool. People don't mind diving in a pool, getting into a pool, because they can see everything is comfortable. They can see everything. But you get out into the sea and you can't see, right? You can't see what is 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 feet down below, and knowing that it may be 400 feet below. And, just dive in the ocean and be swimming around and such like that is kind of scary. And that is the truth of the matter when we think about dealing with the emotions, and certain emotions that have been around for years, never mind years, decades. But it is so important. And it's important because the connection with the disease has to do with that tighten, that tension, that holding, and that's because it's not a natural thing in how nature works. It's not natural. Then that's where, issues will start to come up. Constipation, holding on. You can't have any blockage with the kidneys and through your bladder, through your urinary tract. You can't, because the toxicity is being held in the bladder. It's too overwhelming. We have to release the toxicity from our body. And this is where proper breathing comes into play. And a lot of people who are dealing with issues and feelings and emotions, and now we're talking about the guilt and anger. We're not talking about the joy and stuff. However, the joy and the love, and to get there often is swimming down or diving deep down to get through the other stuff, to get through the other stuff. When you get through that other stuff, then there are these other emotions, feelings that feel a whole lot better. Call it joy. It's a simple one. But to kind of get to that depth, because we're quite often with feelings and emotions, you're constantly repeating them with, I'll just call it the altered ego, your thoughts. And repeating them is just kind of holding us, pattern related. It's like addictions, pattern related. And in order to kind of work with them, it doesn't mean you have to push them away even further. That's not the idea. The idea is not to push them away further. The idea is to loosen them up, to be looking at them as opposed to pushing them away and trying to run away. Run away, do the things that kind of distract. Even watching TV is a huge distraction. Reading romance books can be a huge distraction. Yeah, it can be fun. There's historical stuff in there. But the idea is we do not want to run away from them. We actually have to deal with them. And as hard as that seems, sometimes the moving into being the best you, the joyful you, the fun you, the character of you that that would be a pleasure to be around is still even deeper than those other kind of emotions, because those other kind of emotions are comfortable on one hand. It's still not talking about it, you're just kind of doing it because you feel, we feel like we have the right to be angry and stuff like that. And there's the circumstances where we, feel shame or we feel guilty, and we bring them up, and we're just kind of staying in that shallow water that we can see and play in, when it's really diving a whole lot deeper and looking at them. There's many things to talk about around that, but I wanted to make sure this kind of ties into why disease at the same time. And because disease isn't seemingly going away, and quite often a lot of people are looking for the magic bullet. And there are definitely therapists that will, massage, relax, and you feel so much better. But at the end of the day, biochemically, chemistry in our body is going to be dictated more towards how our nervous system, our feelings, our actions in that way, our emotions is kind of coming out. So it's really, really, really key just to think about this and how it may relate. And I'm always offering my time to talk to people. So I just put it out there, 15 minutes, no problem, phone. Just tell me certain things, and oftentimes more of the surface thing that people are willing to talk about. But there's no crazy things, really. Many of the emotions and feelings that any of us could come up with, whatever list it is, it is so that through our lifetime we've either seen it, experienced it at some point, maybe more than others, deeper than others, whatever it is. We can all agree that if we haven't felt disappointment or frustration or sadness or guilt or shame, or we can go on and on, it's something we can all agree here that all of us have in our lifetime experienced these emotions. It's just a matter of whether or not we're letting them actually eat at us and repeat pattern-wise, right? The patterns. So with diseases, you can see, I already understand, there's something going on with feelings and emotions. There cannot not be. And it could be as simple as not getting along with the mother, not getting along with the father, and the whole communication process around that. And because you're dealing with other people, relationships, then quite often these relationships may very well be a huge stress and strain. And how do you deal with it? Most people, we haven't been taught how to deal with it properly, how to work with that. And because you've got this happening in all the many relationships within our reality, or within our family, or within our friends, that kind of thing. The difference in cultures, all those differences absolutely make a difference, because that gets back into the beliefs. If you believe things should be a certain way, or you believe a culture is worse than another, we're kind of broad stroking the entire culture in some ways when we think we know whatever surface thing we know. You can see how we can stay on the surface with things without deep diving deeper and understanding what the culture is, which is, anthropology. So many of us are in that boat where we've had to, or we can have the option to learn more before we kind of get there. But it's key, because these emotions and these feelings tie into the physical, so the mind, body, and that definitely makes a huge difference on your chemistry. Chemistry would be tied to the acid in your body, the hormones and what's being produced, the acid in your body, again, your pH levels, acid, alkaline, and all that. So important and very, very important piece. And in time, maybe there are various things to talk about. But because everybody's unique in their beliefs, unique in their emotions and feelings, then it's definitely unique things that have to be dealt with. Your stories, or why one person would be angry versus another person. And because we have attachments to this anger, we get obviously more angry to people that are closer to us, for however that works. But the idea is that most people are wrapped up in it and really can't step back and kind of see it for what it is. So that's where people like myself and others kind of come in and can be very helpful in understanding situations, unraveling it, and having the tools. Because these tools, even though you understand something, because we're not together every second of the day, you're out there and about, and you want to be able to work with the things that, emotions and feelings. Tools become extremely important and can be very, very powerful. That over time, it's like the onion, the layers in the onion. You keep shedding, and you keep getting to the core. In this case, emotions. If we pick out anger, you get to the core of where the anger is coming from. So quite often it is a self journey when it comes there. It's really a self journey, and because there's as much forgiving other people as there is yourself. Now, it's not that we're trying to forget here. I like what the Dalai Lama said. I can't remember if it was just a little video, but he had said that we can forgive, but you don't have to forget. And, forgetting, forgiving, that may mean different things to differently to different people here. And of course, what I get the most is the degrees of things that have happened to cause the anger are so varied. I mean, we already talked about the car scenario. You don't even know this person. But if you get down to, halfway point, let's say, you will have your reasons why you're angry. This person did this person did that. And quite often there's a very serious thing that kind of happened in your life that made you get really angry, holding on to it. And, we will hold on to it even more if it is somebody that we deem, we love closer to us. And that's the truth of the matter. So I've had people that are working on their relationships, which not necessarily comes at first, but the idea is, yeah, Cheryl, I can work with that. That's so-and-so friend, that's so-and-so distant cousin. Yeah, and I can see how it's not such a big deal right now. And then all of a sudden we get to a brother or a sister, a mother or a father. And, we have to go deeper, deeper into the sea to kind of work with that. And this is where the growth, this is where the physical healing and those kind of things can happen. So I'm just going to briefly bring up something, because this was, hi Glenford. Self-love and forgiveness goes a long way. And self-love, self-forgiveness. I'm just going to say this, share with this story. So I was at this lecture, and it was here in Toronto, and I remember it was you get there early, and I was standing by this guy, and he, why are you here? I'm like, Cheryl the Curious. And he proceeds to tell me, and I'll just give you the short of it, that he was diagnosed with cancer. And he he explored without asking him too many questions. I wanted him to keep talking. He explored what it was about, and he got to this point where he decided his cancer was caused by all of the emotions, that's called negative emotions, that he had toward his father, but also he also took on a number of the beliefs that his father had. So he was an angry guy. I'm just going to say angry is the one emotion, but there were other things. And once he released all of that, and I remember him saying, yeah, I gave up coffee, but I didn't give up chocolate. And he didn't change his diet, as we know that some of these, I'll just call them healing centers that exist out there, where they go and they give up everything, and they're cleansing and they're purging and, all of this physical diet stuff. And relaxing and, massage and all these things. No, this person did not do it to that degree. He dealt with his feelings. He dealt with his emotions. He had to only be able to do that through his new understandings. He did all of that, and he reversed his cancer naturally. So ever since that time, I know that was a long time ago. I'm trying to think, 10 to 15 years ago. It always stuck with me that I heard that loud and clear. And even now that I've been doing the metaphysical and the counseling for the past several years, the idea is our thoughts are so important to our physical well-being. More so, but not to lose sight that what you put into your body, he did do some changing to his diet, but he didn't do the extreme by far, and he was very comfortable with that. So he's happy to be on his journey to continue to learn. That's the key thing. He doesn't stop there. It's an ongoing journey, and it'll be on his ongoing journey, and that's that about that. Glenford says, forgetting is necessary. The Chinese say, dig 2 graves, one for the person you despise and one for you. Yes, I've heard that said a couple different ways. Revenge is digging 2 graves for the other person as well as for you. So, yes, it would absolutely be harming you or hurting you or not allowing for the most amazing life we all deserve, right? More joy, more adventure, more creativity, more pleasure, more enjoyment in everything that you're doing. It doesn't have to be a crazy life. It could be very simple. But absolutely, yes, Glenford. There's so many things. I mean, it's like the natives talk about the 2 wolves, right? The story of the 2 wolves. And the elder, I'll just say, speaks to, I think it's his grandson, speaks to how there's the one wolf that's, you can think of all the positive and goodness and all of that. And then the other wolf, he was kind of saying life is like that. And the other wolf is, yeah, you're angry, you've got all these other emotions that are not serving you. And you have these 2 wolves inside you. And the child, of course, this is kind of like a story so we can learn, says, well, which one wins? And what the answer is, well, which one you feed? Which one you feed? Which one are you paying attention to? Which one are you giving service to? So spin the story as many times, as many ways as you can. Hear it in probably many different cultures, Chinese, native, it's probably in many different cultures, makes sense, right? What you pay attention to is what you're going to get more of, and it can kind of go on and on. So that's kind of enough for, around emotions and so forth, because emotions and feelings will absolutely drive your physical chemistry, but it will also drive in how you're feeling about any little things that are happening to you, any little things. And so it's about diving deep into the great blue sea, as we'll call it, and just keep going. Like the sea is deeper and deeper, and it is about, letting go and being open. and releasing the fear, releasing the fear. And so that's kind of about that. The other thing I wanted to kind of wrap up to as well, thinking of time. And hello, everyone. And I'm grateful for the comments. Absolutely. So you can play back if you want to listen about emotions and feelings. The thing I wanted to bring up for the herb of the week is actually, and I don't know if I'm actually saying it correctly, because it seems that they've written it all into Latin. So Olea Europea, that's what I'll say. Quite a popular name, but this, now that we're talking about the herbs here, this one has to do with olives. Now, olives are something that we absolutely consume, and the oil from olives can be very medicinal. You can actually take it by the tablespoon, and it's very helpful, as it says in here, to alleviate dry skin and joint problems. This gets into the conversation of always making sure we have enough healthy fats, because if we didn't have any fat, we'd be like cardboard at the end of the day. So, but there's also a couple other parts to do with the olive tree, let's say, and the fruit that grows on it is actually the leaves and the bark. So I just wanted to read it here. So the leaves are available for tea, by the way, and you can order them online at Olive Oil Emporium, but you can look them up, olive leaf tea. And so traditionally the leaves and bark were used to bring down fevers, but they have also been attracting more interest currently to their ability to reduce blood pressure. So this is, many of these herbs sometimes can be actually put together with a couple of others. You really have to know what you're doing, but you can see that when you're looking up teas. If you go into any health food store, this might be a project, or online, and you look up tea for blood pressure, tea for laxative tea for sleeping, you're going to see a combination of herbs and leaves and so forth. But I wanted to talk about the olives, because not just the olive oil, not just the olives to get the olive oil and so forth, but actually the leaves have that. I've never seen the bark, and of course in my area here we don't have olive trees. But yeah, so there's, as you can see from around the world, olive trees grow. They grow in many different countries, not just in the Mediterranean, and Italy, Greece, Turkey, Egypt, probably. This all in the Mediterranean. I know that because just working recently, helping out during the busy holiday season at Olive Oil Emporium, you can see where these olive oils come from. They'll say Chile. So there's some chilies down there, So olives down in Chile. There's probably chilies there too. Many other countries, Spain, right? That'd be a good one. Now, most of what you didn't see, or you did see, was that Italy actually brought the oils and mixed them, or they kind of had a presence for organizing the olive oils for around the world. So we always thought something came from Italy. I'm not the expert on that, so I won't say any more. But that is the herb of the week, and thinking medicinal, be it olive tree leaves, that would help with blood pressure. But I do have a bag of it, and I will have it time to time. But it is diving deeper into the herbs to know how maybe they've used them in combination with things to kind of be really helpful. Yeah, and Glenford says olive leaf powder. So sometimes what happens is they are bringing these medicinal things, even the chaga mushroom that I've talked about, and these mushrooms, they're drying them and making them into powder. So you can take them in foods, in smoothies and capsules. that that is possible too as well. So good mention there. But that's where I'm going to end for today. So you can absolutely, if you came on a little bit later, you can see I talked a little bit more about the coronavirus, talked about here emotions and feelings, but also beliefs, and then good old olives, an olive tree, and the byproducts they'd have that would help in our lives and be medicinal and be very healing. On that note. And that note, what I would say is that, let me see, I'm hearing it's suggested as a protection against the coronavirus. Well, if it is, Glenford, I didn't read that. I just actually picked up the book and opened the book and found that the olive was there. So great mention. Absolutely. There are a number of things that are going to protect your immune system. I would also highly suggest cinnamon. Now there's a couple of types of cinnamon, and some cinnamon are what they call the fake cinnamon. And off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of which. The Ceylon is the better one. There you go. Not the cassis, the Ceylon cinnamon. It's a bit lighter, a bit softer with the bark, but cinnamon, when I did my book, was as other ones were, but I know we use more, so we can use more cinnamon, and we can use it in more things versus clove and stuff like that. But high on the level of antioxidants, way more than blueberries, to tell you the truth, and you can explore that more. But it is these kind of things that would help strengthen our immune system, and that's a very important thing ongoingly. But also to caution you, because I know I've heard many people do the oregano oil, which is very powerful and kill bacteria, do that ongoingly, and that's not what you want to do. So when we're talking about teas and things, I think like olive leaf tea, that is more, it works at a degree of more subtle or softer, or not as not as crazy as some herbs and things where you can just take a little bit, and you take too much, you can die. And also be mindful, people, that there are side effects with medicinal herbs. And so this is very important. If you have any condition, certain conditions more than others may be susceptible to being harmed. So read your labels if you are, if you can, especially if you're taking the supplements. If you're taking a tea, maybe not so much, but in the leaves and stuff, because it's not concentrated. But in some cases, when we get to tinctures, even that much more concentrated, and you get into those extracts, and you get into something like the oregano oil, they're more concentrated, and I would caution you to know what you're doing. But right off the get-go, I can tell you the oregano oil you should not be doing every day. It's not a good preventative. It's not meant to be used that way. And there's a few other things too, in the way of herbs and cleansing and things like that. You don't want to constantly use them. You don't want to constantly do them. So it's very, very important to do that, to know what you're talking about. There's far too many here to mention, and that's why I kind of bring up the oregano oil, because more and more people hear about it, and they're taking it ongoingly, like every day. And that will not only kill your bad bacteria, it will kill your good bacteria. And if there's such thing as a bad bacteria, then sometimes you've got to understand that sometimes things actually come about for a good reason. And they call it bad bacteria because it seems to be involved at that time when there's something going on. But it may very well have not as crazy bad as you think. It's there to actually tune us into what's going on in the body, like a symptom. Like a symptom. So we have to be careful in how we're understanding things, because it's important that we don't think we have to get rid of everything. We don't want a sterilized body. Like we know much of the food is being sterilized for shelf-stable make things last longer, those kind of things. Having a sterilized body, if we have more bacteria than we have cells in our body, ain't going to be a good thing. So lots of things to think about. But I'm here. I'm here to help people wherever they are and wherever their thinking is. I've had clients even come to me just with 20 questions. They're healthcare practitioners, and we're going through all of these questions so I can bring more understanding, for these practitioners, or for a person that on average is, very in the know of healthy. There's a number of people, because there's a lot of information out there. It makes me smile just to see some of the things that people have uncovered on their own, and trying out and doing. It's great. It's really great. So anyway, I want to say take care, everyone. Great to see you. Hello, Joe. Hello, John. And Elaine and Vern. So wonderful, Glenford. I've known Glenford for several years now, for piping in and for sharing, and for anybody else who wants to share. What is your take on black seed oil? We can have so many questions. There's two things I want to kind of mention here. One is the source. So as some things happen, and you can even hear about this in oregano oil, there's wild oregano oil, and there is the commercial oregano oil. And there can be a huge difference. It's no different than, actually, I'll get into the raw process. That's the next one. So there's wild and commercial to think about. I was only going to mention the seal oil there, but seals are not commercially, farmed. They're not. So that's not a good example. But the fish are, right? The fish are. So if you think of the fish that are farmed and they're not consuming a natural diet, the oil that would come from the fish would not be apropos. So, and now black seed oil, and like any oil or anything, would have their unique circumstances. So that's one to think about, is actually the raw material and how it was raised or where it was grown, because in farming and commercial, quite often they can deplete the soil, right? So black seed oil is something that I've heard about come from the islands. So it may not be commercialized. In fact, somebody gave me a bag of it, and it was to mix it with honey and to have a teaspoon of it. And so there's probably that where it's the whole black seed and I'm doing something with it. Now, my understanding on any oils, as you know, that's a little bit of my forte, is ask the questions and find out how it's processed. Olive oil, the same thing. A cold press, a first press, and if you press it at too fast of a speed, you can say it's cold pressed because they didn't add any heat, but there's heat generated by the friction. So the whole processing thing is very, very key, Glenford, and for anybody who's on here, as to what oils to use. So right at the one end of the spectrum is the highly processed vegetable oils, including olive oil, right? That's not in a dark bottle. And these oils are highly processed, that you can keep them in a jug and sit them in your cupboard and they not change. Well, I dare any here to actually get out a teaspoon and to take a teaspoon of those oils that have been sitting in there for several months and just see how it sits on your tongue. Smell it even. But quite often, what are you doing? What are most people doing? The off-putting of the food, maybe not only the terrible pots, because the pots are with very high, temperatures are, maybe leaching the taste and affecting the food, but the various oils that we're using. And this is why sometimes things taste that great. But Glenford Peters, I have absolutely heard great things about the black seed, and that there are certain companies out there that have found a gentle process that would maintain its integrity but maintain its healing properties. That's very important. With the seal oil, if you refine, bleach, and deodorize it like you do with the vegetable oil, you end up with, and I'll just quote the biochemist, Tang instant orange juice. Tang instant orange juice, that's what you would get, even though it's seal oil. And if it's raw, then it really has a much better, we can go into vibration here. We can go into it giving a different healing potential, that kind of thing. And again, everything that we would bring up here, be it, black seed, be it cumin, be it cinnamon, be it anything, you have to look at them uniquely, in my opinion. There may be some subtle differences from like how cloves versus cinnamon and how long they would last. One good example of that, because I know so much about oils, is quite often we can fall into a trap of thinking everything is the same. It's an oil. These specialty oils, and I'm going to use the example of walnut oil. Walnut oil versus a good cold pressed olive oil is, it may say that the expiry date on there is 6 months or 9 months or a year. Same with the olive oil. But when you test walnut oil, it actually is only 1 month. This is out of the labs and the research. It's actually 1 month. There's a difference. Now, walnuts, because omegas are something that I lecture on and want to be informed, it's been many years, is that walnuts have a higher omega-3, and omega-3 have a higher affinity to oxygen. So that oil, as soon as you take it from the walnuts, are going to have a higher affinity for oxidizing, and it's not the best oxidizing when we want to eat it when it's oxidized too much. It'd be like you cutting up an apple and having it go brown and going, all right, I'm going to eat it now. No, the apple would not be to your better health. It just would not be. Whereas if you just cut up an apple and you eat it, and you eat it quick enough, you'll have a whole lot less oxidation. Of course, they say that some apples will oxidate quicker than others, and there's different theories about that. Again, we can roll and dive down all kinds of rabbit holes here with many things, but the 5 elements in the TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine modality, has emotions attached to each. For example, the wood element is attached, and you probably want it to finish that. But there's so much helpful information to kind of put the pieces together. It doesn't mean we live our life being health-minded. I want to interject that, because health-minded will take us away from our creativity. It'll take us away from the joy and the fun and the curiosity and the digging in the dirt. And some of these other things, fitness, if we just were so health-minded, and I've had people like that, they were so health-minded, and when I saw them and we're kind of going through everything they're doing, just let's start with everything, they were doing a lot of good things. Of course, nobody here, not including me, can do everything and anything that's talked about there or listed out there to be healthy. We can't. I mean, if we brought an Ayurvedic and we brought some other stuff and native stuff and Chinese stuff, I mean, there's just no way you would be able to do it in a single day. That was one of the complaints I've actually had through conversations with people and practitioners. They'll say, have you heard about this? And I'll go, yeah, when we have conversation about, oh, geez, I can't add one more thing to my day, Cheryl. I mean, I'm trying to, hard as this, but that's very stressful. I've had to tell those people to go on vacation, take a holiday, and start moving back from being so busy. And I'll call it health-minded here as well. So health busy, health-minded. I mean, none of us could go and say, all right, I'm going to do yoga in a day, Tai Chi in a day, Qigong in a day, Wide in a day, go work out, do some high intensity, whatever it is. You can just think, you know, where I'm going. We kind of have to kind of focus in, but also bring in the balance of things at the same time and focus what kind of resonates that you need and what there is to be that, you know, to be comfortable, to be balanced, to be healthy enough to have that in there. So yeah, lots of good information out there, tons of information. I could talk for days and probably months, and because of all the, you know, things that have come in, and just to give you a better understanding, because there's one thing to say things, do this or this is that, but I feel very strongly about having you understand more about what it is and how things are kind of related than just spewing out information. I don't think that's, anyway, I don't like to do it. So I'm going to end there, 5:55 at where I am at 5, and 5 elements. See all the 5s here. So I'm going to wish you best of health. Any other comments, any further comments, any questions? I mean, if you want to do a 15-minute talk, you know, just talk about what it is that's on your mind and what you're worried about or what you're, you know, going through, great. I always recommend that because I think it's very helpful for people to be able to do that with practitioners, right? We're all in different pages, right? So take care, everyone. Best of health. Live at 5 next Monday, but you know that YouTube has all of the past ones. I tried to label them as best as possible, but take care. Enjoy your week. Bye for now.